Alright, my fellow denizens of the Under Empire, today we are back with the showdown between the Skaven, who shall be led by Lord Skrolk, who's getting a little bit lonely. Everybody was picking Claw, you get the picture. And they're going to be facing off against Norska, who shall be helmed by Wulfric. So as far as the build goes, it's going to be relatively similar to what I used to bring against Norska, but we do have a couple nice additions. So firstly, here in the front, it's going to be the Rattling Gunners. So the Rattling Gun weapons team, these guys are pretty strong. Now, they're much tougher to use than Jezzails. Jezzails are kind of like Ushapti Great Bows. They can shoot from a distance. They generally get their value because even if your formation gets compromised as soon as the fighting starts, at least they got some damage in from a range. But Rattling Gunners are a little bit tougher to use in my opinion. But these guys can do so much work. Now, at their max range of 145, they don't do a ton of damage. It seems like this shots are a little bit inaccurate. Obviously, they're just shooting all wild. But when somebody gets close, like let's say the distance from these Rattling Guns to Skrolk, if they unleash a full volley into someone that close, it will just eviscerate them and tear them to shreds. So they're a little bit of a finesse unit, but I still think Rattling Guns are pretty good, and they do, of course, have that suppress, which is quite juicy. But aside from that, front line of Skaven Slaves, 2 of the Gut Runners with Poison up in front to do some skirmishing, backline protection once they fall back. And Rat Ogres are essential in this matchup, and pretty much every matchup. You need high mass units, because the biggest way to bully Skaven is just to run in with heavy cav and cav units and just swarm them, basically. So I think like 4 or 5 Rat Ogres in most matchups is pretty good. So we have 4 of those bad boys here, going to be protecting the back line, 2 Warp Lightning Cannons to shoot down Famir, to shoot down Werewolves, all that kind of good stuff. And of course, the Natty Bubo Sharpshooters here in the back, which are probably my favorite unit in the DLC. So these guys obviously have Snipe, they have Shield Breaker, they basically, yeah, you guys get the picture, they're really good. But what I was going to say is that they can't see them. So these guys are shooting from the shadows. Yes, your opponent can see the tracer round, so they can see the purple fire coming out of them, but they can't counter fire you. So if you're playing against someone who has artillery or wants to use some magic from afar, they're not going to be able to target the unit, which is very, very good. And we have Skrolk. We're going to be going for a bit of a nuke build. So what I wanted to do, instead of getting Claw, who's a little bit better versus like infantry and other units, we're going to get Skrolk, Lieber, plus Rattling Gunners, plus Jezzails, and we're going to be trying to, take Norska to Pound Town here, or I should say their leadership. Now, for the build of King of the Dead, he does have a ton of dogs, a ton of hounds, pretty much standard, because if one Norscan Ice Wolf is able to get in there and like feast on the souls of my sharpshooters or my Rattling Gunners, it is going to be a disaster. So he does have Norscan Warhounds, the Ice Wolves here. He does have a couple Werewolves as well, which are pretty good. These bad boys obviously able to use their mass to push through the front line. If their opponent doesn't have Rat Ogres, they have anti-large against Rat Ogres as well. So it's going to be a good trade either way for them. So I really need to focus these guys down with my Jezzails and Warp Lightning Cannon. So he's got more dogs and Werewolves on the other side. Front line's going to be Marauder Champions, which are just going to beat the brakes off my slaves, but I'm not terribly worried. I do have a ton of summons, and hopefully I'll be okay in that respect. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just a ton of infantry, werewolves, and dogs to get into the back line. He does also have a shaman sorcerer with fire, who I'm really going to be trying to pick off here. And Wulfric is going to be the final choice here. Wulfric very, very good at assassinating characters like Lord Skrolk. So let's get the show on the road. So my slingers are going to be doing a little bit of poking here in the front line, but now they're going to fall back and should be able to butter up those marauders. We're down to 65 models, and the Warp Lightning Cannons are just going downtown shooting at the werewolves here, getting some okay value. It doesn't look like we've killed any models, but the Jezzails are opening up, and the werewolves are going to be forced back. Now, this is where the matchup really is won or lost, right? He's going to be coming into the back line here with werewolves, not werewolves, but the Norscan Ice Wolves, as well as the Norscan Warhounds. And I really have to position my Rat Ogres. So you can see I'm forming a bit of a wall right here. So these guys are going to screen up to meet those guys. And on the other side, I'm going to be screening them out as well. But I do have some Skaven Slaves doing a good job holding back these werewolves. And you can see the Warp Lightning Cannons are really tearing into them. Now, the Rattling Guns weapon team, I did open up and do some okay damage against the champs. But I'm going to be falling back. I'm hoping to pull in the Shaman Sorcerer as well as Wulfric and really do some damage. But the good thing is, the Jezzails are tearing apart these Skin Wolves. The back line is still safe. You can see the big Alpha Strikes going to be coming in right now, but the Rattling Gunners are going to be opening up here. I'm going after the caster and some of these champions, and they're doing a little bit of damage. Certainly, peppering up the Shaman Sorcerer plus Wulfric, but just wait till they get a little bit closer. It is insanity. So if we look around the battlefield, the frontline fighting is underway. Skaven Slaves are just going to be massacred by these Marauder champions, but they're doing their job for the Horned Rat. Skrolk is going to be dropping some Summoned Plague Monks here, who, of course, with the new summoning mechanic, have a hard deadline, and the Slingers are just helping to fight off the dogs, who are, causing some problems, but for the most part, I have plenty of Rat Ogres to deal with those very annoying backline threats. Now check it out. So Wulfric and the Shaman Sorcerer are going to be charging in here, and this is the true Last Samurai. For the first time, we're actually able to say that. So I dropped the Libra on him, so he's going to be taking a ton of damage. Warp Lightnings are going, and just watch this damage right here. So the Rattling Gunners are just going to be tearing into this guy. Brutal damage as he gets melted by those Rattling Gunners. Just awesome stuff. Now, yes, the Libra was on him as well, so that was damaging him, but for the most part, that is still some really good lawn mowing. So the Rat Ogres are going to be rushing in, going after Wulfric, and the bounce power with that does go into my favor. On the flanks, some of these wolves aren't able to get into the back line, and the Rat Ogres and Skaven Slaves are just doing such a good job of holding up. And yeah, that was the mistake I was making when I was playing some of my earlier games with this DLC, is that I didn't really bring a lot of Rat Ogres, but it is so important if you're going to be going with missile-centric builds, like using some of these Jezzails and Rattling Gun teams and the Warp Lightning Cannons, to have Rat Ogres to fend off these backline threats. They're very effective, and yeah, they're pretty fast and decent against infantry as well. So when the fight does devolve and their front line finally gets here, Rat Ogres can do a really good job. So they're able to last Samurai a couple of these champions as well. And now these little rat boys need to run. So I don't know how fast they are. They actually have 70 armor, which isn't bad, and their speed is, yeah, it looks like it's like 36, 37 or something like that. So, Skrulk Daddy's going to be fighting against the champions right here, trying to fend those guys off, and some of the gutter runners are going to be falling back. Now, Norska isn't out of the game yet, even though the bounce power is very heavily in my favor. And Wulfric just getting taken out by the Jezzails. These guys are just going to town on Wulfric right here. Just great stuff. Jezzails are such cool units. I'm really glad Skaven have some of these new tools, because typically it was very tough for them to, like, you had Libra Bonicus and Warp Lightning Cannons, but some of these characters could just bully your Skaven. But now it's really nice to have some tools to actually peel them off. Now on the flanks, a little bit of a missing situation here. The Clan Rats are going to be surging forth to help out these Rat Ogres who are being beaten down by the Skin Wolves, the premier condom brand of the old world. But the Natty Brutal Sharpshooters are going to be turning about face, taking some shots, but you can see the backline is getting pressured quite a bit. So had I not been able to get the leadership, this could be a pretty scary situation, as the Norska is having a bit of a second resurgence here. Anyway, Sharpshooters turning about, trying to get on these Beasts of Tashnar, and you can see in the back here, there is going to be a pirate ship coming down from Wulfric, which is going to be tearing through the formation, doing a ton of damage to the Skaven. I actually never noticed that before. Can you guys see that? They're like dragging those those anchors right there through your formation. I guess that's where the damage comes from. But anyways, one of my Warp Lightning Cannons is offline. The bounce power is pretty heavily in my favor at this point. But Lord Skrulk is going to be holding quite proud here with the Rat Ogres and just has plenty of summons. Now, the summons will just have a hard disappearance at one point. So I think after like 63 or 80 seconds or something, I have to go ahead and double check that. But there is a point where they disappear pretty quick. And the Rattling Gunners have done pretty good for themselves. Did a lot of damage, not a lot of kills though. They have 1 kill as a matter of fact. But I was focusing down big targets mostly, and the suppression was quite useful earlier in the game against some of those hero units. Now, bounce power is pretty much staying in the same spot. The Jezzails are going to be falling back. Wulfric is trying to get in there as a bit of a last-ditch effort, but he just gets blasted into the Shadow Realm by those Warp Lightning Cannons. Beautiful stuff right there. And you can see here that the Warp Lightning Cannons are going to be shooting downtown onto the last of those Armored Skin Wolves. And from there, we should be able to polish those guys off. Now, for the remnants of the Norskin forces, they are getting a little bit stronger. As the game goes on, Norskin Berserkers, or all units that have the Berserk mechanic, are going to be getting stronger, causing more problems. But at this point, I think without their leadership, it's going to be a little bit tough to polish off Skrulk. And I still have Rat Ogres here, so it looks like there's going to be 12 of those bad boys. Over here we do have another 6, and I think there's probably some lurking in the shadows. I mean, Skaven always have stuff coming back, and the Rattling Guns weapon team is back online as well. So very well played to King. It was definitely both of our first times kind of experimenting with some of these new units, and man, those Rattling Guns plus Liber can do some serious work. So if somebody comes in with a hero or a flying character and you're able to really, because you know, you can juke Jezzail shots and Warp Lightning shots with flying units, but it's really actually hard to juke the Rattling Gun teams. And I know they only got 1 kill, and it's going to be hard to like say with a straight face that they did really well, but they did pretty good. I mean, gunning down that caster like that was 100% worth it. I was able to gun down the caster, and at the very least, it's something your opponent has to think about, and if they don't, it's going to do a ton of damage. I mean, King did a very good job pressuring it the whole game, and that's why it probably didn't get more kills after it killed the Shaman Sorcerer. But nonetheless, Rattling Guns can do a lot of damage in close quarters combat, and perhaps we'll do some tests with that real quick. Or maybe we'll do it in another video, I'm not sure. But yeah, the Rattling Guns are pretty damn mean for sure. But more of a niche unit, I don't think you should bring a bunch of them. I don't think it's something you can like anchor your army around. I think having one is a bit of a magnet and a bit of a burst against like characters and casters. And against single entities, it does a ton of damage as well. I actually had a really good game against Felcon as a Skaven where it was able to just burn down a Hydra. It was brutal. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think this is actually a pretty competitive build against Norska. You have answers for Famir, you have answers for infantry with Skrulk and the Rat Ogres. The Rattling Guns and Jezzails are able to take out the leadership. I feel like it's a really strong, well-rounded build for sure. So very well played to King of the Dead. His build is pretty solid for sure. Champions are good, Hounds are good, and really it just comes down to a couple micro nuances. Like if a couple Hounds get into the back line and you get compromised at any point on your Warp Lightnings or your Jezzails, you're going to be in huge trouble. But if I'm able to defend them, we're going to be in great shape. So very well played to him. There's going to be a lot of games coming up here on the channel, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. All right, guys, so that last game was a little bit short, so I figured, hey, let's go ahead and tack on a second game here. This is going to be the Vampire Council led by Manfred von Baldstein facing off against the Lizardmen. We're going to be led by, I think it's Lizard Moses or Tenenhuan. Yes, it is. And he's going to be on the Engine of the Gods. So as far as my build goes, it's going to be, pretty standard stuff against dinosaurs, right? You're usually going to be expecting heavy armor. As such, up in the skies, we do have the double Terrorgeist. Now, this has always been very, very solid. Terrorgeists, of course, have the mobility advantage over Carnosaurs. Their breath attacks do a ton of damage against single targets, and yeah, they're a pretty safe pick for the most part. We got Manfred as well because I just wanted to get that extra punch. So you're coming in with 2 Terrorgeist, you have 2 breath attacks, and having that Spirit Leech on top of all that is so damn valuable, and he has so much Winds of Magic with that Sword of Unholy Power. Manfred definitely a very, very solid pick here. So for the front line, this is probably the first mistake I've made as far as the build goes. I do have 3 groups of the Graveguard. So Graveguard are very good against Saurus and Skinks, but most of the time, at least from my experience, even before this patch, most people actually just bring a bunch of Temple Guard in the front line, so you definitely need a little bit more AP, but I do have some AP here in the back line, so we're not in terrible shape. So the Cairn Race here do, of course, have pretty good armor-piercing values, and, before the Lizardmen, I suppose they had some decent magic damage, but for the most part, it wasn't, super common. But here, Tenenhuan, I believe, does have the Engine of the Gods Blast, so if he's able to get that down on top of the Cairn Race, that's going to be pretty crazy for sure. And on top of that, I think the Ark of Sotek, let's actually go ahead and double check. So the Ark of Sotek is one of the new units here, and let's go ahead and take a look. It is the Glorious Snake Launcher, and does it do magic damage? So it causes minor damage. It does not say that it's magic. Perhaps, I would assume it is. Most of these Vortex spells are, so I guess we'll have to find out and see, or wait and find out. So front line's going to be Graveguard. Secondary line, we got some Skeleton Spears, Skeleton Warriors over on the flanks to chase off Skink Skirmishers and other units like that. And a second group of the Cairn Race. So I was like, hey, let's get some terror, let's get some armor piercing, and hope that the magic damage of the dinos can't really tear through them. So that's pretty much it for my build. We do, of course, have one of Helman Gorth's own creations. I don't know if he actually created it, but maybe this is like one of Gorth's cousins or something. Corpse Cart with the Unholy Lodestone. So for the build of the dinos, a very awesome build here from King of the Dead. He does have Tenenhuan here on the big old monster, the Engine of the Gods. So it has some pretty cool buffs. I haven't made it work myself, but we'll see if he can. So it has the Burning Alignment. So this is like a massive Vortex ability. It does magic and fire damage. Pretty good against vampire counts. And it does a huge amount of damage. It's a very slow cast time. So it's, if you see it coming, you can dodge it. But if you're in the heat of a battle, it can get you pretty good. So he has that. On top of that, he has the Blade of the Serpent's Tongue, which is very good in this Death Star style of play with the Star Chamber Guardians and these elite troops. They're all going to have poison, which is so damn good. And he does also have a ward save ability, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go ahead and double check here. So I think it's around here somewhere. Yeah, the Portent of Warding is going to be giving 5%, which is pretty decent with Temple Guard. They're already really tough to kill. So very solid elite Death Star army here. And, Temple Guard spam and just going with that elite formation was already very good against the vampire counts in my opinion, but now with some of these new monsters, like having the Ark of Sotek and the Engine of the Gods, it's going to be even tankier, which is going to be really cool. So I also have a couple Fellbats, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, Temple Guard in the front line, a couple Skinks out here on the flanks. He's got a big old Angry T-Rex and an Ancient Salamander. So the Ancient Salamander, anti-large, of course it does fire damage, and it's going to be tough to get to it with all of these elite kind of troops defending. And yeah, this Sally's looking pissed. She's got anti-large, armor piercing. I think she has anti-large right down here, right? I don't know if it's even a she. Doesn't look like it does have anti-large, but nonetheless, 470 weapon damage with flammable, which is going to be really good against Vargulfs and troops like that, and a Feral Carnosaur. So on that note, guys, let's get the show on the road and see if Manfred von Waldstein can get the job done. So right here, I'm going to be dropping a couple breath attacks from the Terror guys up here. So I get a pretty decent little one here on the T-Rex. So the Feral Carnosaur is going to be taking some substantial damage. There's no Rev Crystal going on, so any damage I can get before the fighting starts is always going to be pretty good. So what I'm going to be trying to do is just Alpha Strike this Feral Carnosaur, really take that guy down, but the cohorts were actually able to really just lance down my bats. So I brought the bats just to make sure I had aerial superiority, and in case he tried to come in with like Ripperdactyls and the Colossodon Hunters, I really wanted to make sure I had enough up in the skies to kind of fight him off there. In the meantime, Manfred and company going to be getting in position, and the frontline engagement is going to be underway, so you can see here that the Cairn Race have engaged with the Star Temple, or Star Chamber Guardians, I think is what they're called. Do they do magic damage? Oh, that is so not good. I didn't even notice that. So the Star Chamber Guardians actually do magic damage, so I was wondering how my Cairn Race just got dumpstered so bad. I was like, oh, typically Temple Guard don't have that, but that's really, really good stuff here. Those guys are just putting in work and beating down my Cairn Race. So Manfred and company are going to be responding in kind, and we do get a really good punch here. So we jump on the Feral Carnosaur, really put that guy down, and guys, the Engine of the Gods is upon us. Here it comes. It's going to be Gotham's Reckoning, and boom! The beam is going to be coming downtown, tearing through the Sternsmen, just eviscerating them and annihilating those Skeleton Spearmen. So I deserve that 100%. That did so much damage. So the Sternsmen pretty much brought them full to nothing. Skeleton Spear's taken out, Cairn Race got taken out. Just a very, very bad initial situation for me. That engagement was pretty terrible, but other aspects of the fight aren't going so bad. My two Terrorgeists in the back here are able to Shrek this Feral Carnosaur really well. Manfred von Karstein popping the Master of the Black Arts is going to be getting more Winds of Magic, more zombie summons, all that kind of good stuff. And so far, it's a good trade. I mean, we lost a lot in the front line, probably a little bit more than, in terms of damage we did, but we did get rid of one of his big anti-large tools. And from there, he does have the Salamander, who, of course, is going to be pretty good against these Terrorgeists here. But for the most part, it's going to open up a really good fight here for the Terrorgeists. The biggest issue for the rest of this game, though, is going to be dealing with the Temple Guard, because one Cairn Wraith I still have. I believe there's one up here that's relatively healthy, just kind of chewing through these skinks, taking it sweet, sweet time. But aside from that, I don't have too much armor piercing against these troops. And you can see here that the Temple Guard are very healthy, 69 models, that's what she said. And on top of that, he does have these Star Chamber Guardians who are pretty much in perfect health. That was so cool seeing the Tenenhuan, or however you say his name, I'll get it right eventually, guys. I just need to like hear it said enough, and get corrected enough times. But anyways, Lizard Moses doing a really good job. He's very, very tanky, and even still, he's a pretty good combatant. He doesn't have the best raw combat stats, but his just tankiness and his leadership and all those other stats are so damn good. So one of my Terror guys is able to get, well, yeah, got pretty beat up right there. But the other one is going to be going after the Salamander. Manfred's going to be jumping in as well. I basically know that I just have to methodically sweep through his army. The bounce power is a little bit falsely inflated because he does have a Manticore summon. But remember, with the changes to summons now, the Manticore, you guys probably noticed, it's barely taking, I don't think it's taking any damage over time, but it just suddenly died right there. You guys saw that. So the summons have been changed, the units don't last quite as long, but the bounce power is still in his favor, so it looks like he's just doing so much damage to my troops, but I do get a really good jump here on the Ancient Salamander, so just going to be trying to pick off all of his monsters. In the meantime, Manfred using those wheels and his baldness to just get around and cause some problems, and the Ancient Salamander's in a little bit of trouble, and I also did use some Fellbats to chase off the big dinosaur, so anytime you guys are playing this game, if you break a big powerful monster, even if it's relatively healthy, just try and use like a cheap unit to chase it off instead of allocating a big expensive hero or a monster to chase it off yourself. So the second Manticore has been summoned here. The Terror guys are able to finish off the Salamander, so some aspects of the build are going pretty well. We've been very efficient at taking out the Salamanders and, the big dinosaurs that are really a big threat to our Terror guys, so you can see we're pretty dominant in that aspect of the battle. Terror guys is healthy here. This one's healthy right here. The Ark of Sotek, I believe, is still running around dropping snakes, and the Karen Race here, I don't know, it's a bit of a, not the best investment. I mean, I guess they are doing some decent damage, and they do cause terror. Maybe bringing like one of these guys might be okay, but I felt like relying on them for my armor piercing was a pretty big blunder for sure, because they're just getting trapped even by like skinks. They're having trouble killing them. But the Ark of Sotek is still in here. I don't know if you've been able to get too much visuals here on its snakes. Perfect timing. So the snakes here are going to be chewing on Skeleton Spearmen, and it actually does a lot of damage against light armor. It doesn't do so much against like heavily armored troops, but nonetheless, it's very good against like zombie chaff. So I really like this build from King of the Dead. It is solid and very unique, and also we got to see Engine of the Gods, the Ark of Sotek, just all kinds of neat stuff. On top of that, though, the Ark of Sotek, its AoE does actually poison, so even against elite troops, it does have some utility, and of course, it's still a Bastillodon, right? So it's going to be able to get in there with some decent AP itself and Shrek some of these monsters. So Flock of Doom is going to be going down over there. Terror guys were chasing off the Ancient Salamander. The other one here is, trying to fight, but Manfred is just getting bullied right now. And I just don't have enough stopping power. It's really the Temple Guard. I mean, if it were just the monsters, my two Terror guys plus Manfred could easily win this battle, and I actually forgot the Fellbats for so long, but it wouldn't really matter. But I could probably be able to take on 10 and 1, these other troops, but with the Star Chamber Guardians giving Guardian to 10 and 1, plus supporting of warding, he's just so tanky. There's so much anti-large here, and I'm really just not able to chew these guys down. Manfred is going to be getting taken out. One more breath attack coming down, and the last Terror guys is going to be charging in there. So very, very cool build, and it looks like he was going to do a very ceremonial celebration of victory over here with the Engine of the Gods. But it was a great build. It was really cool. I wasn't expecting that many Temple Guard, like those elite troops, but again, maybe I should have, because that was kind of how it was played before. You would see like Temple Guard and Feral Carnosaurs and just like this Helm's Deep that was very tough to deal with. But yeah, a couple things about the build. Manfred and the Terror guys I think were solid. They were able to really bully and outvalue the dinosaurs. So I took a huge beating in the beginning from the Engine of the Gods, and one of the only reasons I was able to actually stay in the game for that long was because I killed the dinosaurs so quick. So I was able to just send them extinct here. So we took out the Feral Carnosaur, we took out the Salamander, and really they didn't generate that much value between these two monsters. But the Ark of Sotek, Temple Guard, and Tenenhuan were able to just do a ton of work, and my infantry corps just was not up to snuff. So perhaps I should have avoided the infantry fight and just tried to snipe the dinosaurs, but even then, the Temple Guard would have just sat back on top of the dinosaurs, and it would have been a little bit tricky, and the Salamander could have kept shooting me, so I kind of had to engage. So yeah, it was a great build from King, and as far as this build goes, is what I would change. I'd keep Manfred, I'd keep the Terror guys probably, I'd cut both Karen Race, I'd cut all of the Graveguard, except the Sternsmen, I might actually keep them, and then from there I would probably just get Graveguard with great weapons. I mean, Cryptors aren't terribly efficient against Temple Guard either. It's a little bit risky. I mean, it just doesn't work that well. So I'd probably just mass Graveguard with great weapons in the front line, just get like 4 or 5 of those guys, cut all these chaff units, get double Terror guys and Manfred with Fata Buna as well. Not bringing Fata Buna was a pretty big mistake. I should have been using that on like the Star Chamber Guardians, but I just wasn't expecting like, obviously I'm not used to some of these new units, right? Like these elite regiments renowned, so I think it was just a big mistake with the Karen Racing Company. But very well played to King. It was a badass build, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this 2-for-1, and we will see you guys next time. Take care.